Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is episode number 3 of the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. In this episode, we'll talk a little bit about keto in the news this week, kind of an interesting experience that I had this past week, and also we will discuss what it's like being keto in a non-keto family. So first off, keto in the news. I don't know if the rest of you saw this article last week, but there was a scientific study, and I use that term very generously in this case, out of Yale University. And in a world where there are a lot of really ridiculous anti-keto studies, I feel like I should do that in a the trailer guy movie voice, like in a world. So, in a world where there's a bunch of really bad keto studies, this one truly stands out as extraordinarily bad. And I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail on it, but I will link to the Diet Doctor article on it, which you'll find below in the description. In a nutshell, what this study said was keto works for 1 week. And then after 1 week, all the benefits go away and you become obese again. And if that sounds ridiculous, then you have at least half a brain. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people that read this stuff don't, and they believe it. There are a lot of flaws with this study. Among them, the particular variety of mice that they used in this test is one that is especially prone to obesity. Additionally, the diet that these keto mice were fed was predominantly hydrogenated soybean oil. So, yeah, I suppose that's keto, but you don't get much more dirty keto than that. And I don't know of any human being that would just try and survive on hydrogenated soybean oil. Anyhow, it's an absolutely ridiculous study, and of course it gets picked up by all different kinds of health sites that then publish it. So instead of talking about that particular article, I want to talk about all anti-keto articles, past, present, and future, because they are all essentially the same article. It's like, what's that game? It's not Choose Your Own Adventure. It's the one where you get a book and it's got blanks and you say, insert noun here, insert verb here. Maybe it'll come to me later, or I'm sure the first person that watches this video will enter it down in the comments. But let me give you the template. If you, viewer, are someone who is opposed to keto and wants to write an article that's anti-keto, here's your template, so get your pen ready. For starters, you are going to want a very clickbaity headline, something that puts fear into anyone that might even be considering keto. Tie it to like long-term health risks, especially, and you're good to go. Long-term health risks far outweigh keto benefits. The long-term side effects that no one tells you about. Something like that. I don't know. Be creative. In fact, let me ask you, viewers, if you could come up with some really clickbaity anti-keto headlines, what would they be? Step number 2, in the very first paragraph, mansplain what the ketogenic diet is. And do it badly. The ketogenic diet, or keto as it's called by its practitioners, is the latest weight loss fad. Make sure you refer to it as a fad, even though the ketogenic diet has been around for almost 100 years. Next, state something that is a fairly ridiculous exaggeration about what the diet consists of. In fact, it might have even been in this most recent article that I read from the Yale study that said, when you're on keto, only 1% of your calories are coming from carbohydrates. But then you can make it even better by sort of couching it in the standard American diet that we've been indoctrinated in with the whole food pyramid. People on the ketogenic diet consume almost exclusively fat, substituting out such healthy items as bread, pasta, and fruit for things like butter and bacon. So basically, misstate the truth and try and portray keto people as essentially insane. Next, list a couple of celebrities that are doing keto. Bonus points if it's Al Roker or Jenna Jameson. Then talk very briefly about the weight loss, sort of in a offhanded way, like, oh, sure, you may lose a few pounds quickly on the ketogenic diet, or keto, but don't mention any of the other positive benefits. So the anti-inflammatory aspects, the improved mental clarity, the improved energy, and on and on. Then move into your study on mice and make a really big deal out of whatever the results are for mice. Now, I know that that's really most of what's out there now is studies on mice. And I don't care whether it's a study that's pro-keto or anti-keto. I think that there's a certain leap of faith that you need to take to say that any results that happen on mice happen on humans. And I don't care if it's keto, I don't care if it's artificial sweeteners. To me, I kind of always take studies on mice with a little grain of salt. Fortunately, there are starting to be more human trials, and I know that Gary Taubes and the nonprofit that he's part of is funding a longer-term human study on the effects of low carb. So it'll be very interesting when that comes out. But in your article, put all of the emphasis on the study on mice and discount any sort of human evidence as just anecdotal. Because there's a bunch of us out here that have been doing keto for more than a week and know that these benefits just don't reverse. Finally, close out the article with some doctors' quotes on the long-term health risks that are assumed, based on a lot of probably Ansel Keys sort of teachings. We really don't know the long-term impact. A person just can't sustain a diet like this and lead a healthy lifestyle. Eventually, this is going to lead to heart disease, stroke, whatever. Just pick a litany of diseases. It's going to happen because of keto. There's your article. Throw in, keto breath and, any other side effects you can think of. Good to go. So there's part of me that whenever one of these articles shows up in my Google News feed, I get frustrated. I face palm and I think, why? Why are people still believing some of these ridiculous articles and claims about keto? And then I realized that maybe instead of being angry or frustrated, I should be happy. And I'm going to tell you why. There are people out there who have a financial interest in the opposite of keto. There is an entire health food and diet industry out there that is run by Weight Watchers and Nutrisystem and Oprah Winfrey and Jillian Michaels that don't want people to be able to just get healthy on their own food and make their own dietary choices and experience incredible benefits that are sustainable. That hurts them. Then you got your doctors and your pharmaceutical companies. These folks make their money by writing out prescriptions, doing lab tests and diagnostic imaging procedures, and cutting people open. When you take that away from them, they are going to be threatened and they are going to react a certain way. We wouldn't see these articles on a weekly basis if they didn't feel threatened by keto. And it makes me think of the quote that's attributed to Gandhi, which is, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And I think we're in phase 3 right now in keto. I think the fight is getting stronger, and to me, that means we're getting closer to winning. I believe it was P.T. Barnum who first said there is no such thing as bad publicity. And I think we need to look at some of these idiotic keto articles as exactly that. It is keeping keto front and center in people's attention. That means that it's going to be something that people talk about. And even though I said in one of my earlier podcasts that I generally try not to get out there and be really zealous about keto, just because a lot of people kind of want to fight you on it, and most of the time I'm not in the mood for that. Instead, I like the approach of being walking, living proof of the effectiveness of the ketogenic diet. When someone sees me that hasn't seen me in months or a year, and they see this very different, younger, healthier, and far lighter me, They want to know. They want to know how it's done. And this affords us the opportunity to be advocates of the ketogenic lifestyle and reframe some of the conversation around it so that people know why some of these articles are absolutely ridiculous. Before we move on, I'm going to try out my first ever in-video ad. I'm not going to make this a thing that I do on all videos, but on the longer ones, the ones that are 15, 20 minutes or longer, I will insert one ad right in the center. Let's see how it works. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too painful. If it wound up not working, then I must have just pulled the ad out of there. So this past week, I had a pretty cool experience. My wife and I were out doing our monthly, we do a little date thing, a little wine tasting thing every month. It's just at Cooper's Hawk, which is sort of like the Applebee's of wine places. It's not like we're going to Sonoma or Napa Valley or something like that. While we were there, and we were talking about serious keto, and we got talking about doing the video podcast because my wife didn't really understand the whole notion of that. She's like, so people just watch you talk? Yeah, it's kind of how a podcast works. Just you talking, that's all you're doing in the video. Yes, that's what I'm doing in the video. And people like that? So that's sort of the support that I get. But as we continued to talk, I mentioned to my wife, I said, it'll be fun one day if I get recognized out in public. I figure it's, a long ways away because I've got 42,000 viewers, and that's globally. I think about 70% of them are in the US. So 28,000, what's the likelihood that I'm just going to be out in the Milwaukee suburbs and be recognized? And then I noticed there's a gentleman over by the registers for food to go, and he's looking at me. And he starts to smile. And when you have someone looking at you that looks like they recognize who you are, you start to wonder where do I know this person from? So I'm looking at him like, do I know you? He's looking at me like, I know you. And he smiles, and as he's walking over and approaching me, he says, "You're Keto Steve." And I said, "I think you've confused me for someone else." And then I had my security detail take him outside and beat the hell out of him. So don't ever approach me in public. I kid. No, he came up and he welcomed me back from my vacation. Apparently he follows me on Instagram as well. And we got talking about Hawaii and, him taking a trip there with his wife. And it was really fun. It was just two dudes talking. I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing that I get seen. I kind of don't expect so. I think that was just a total fluke, but it was kind of cool. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is insert family member of yours keto? Is your wife keto? Is your family keto? Are your kids keto? And the answer to that is no. And it is difficult to be the keto person in a non-keto family for a few reasons. First off, I get about 20% of the pantry space in our house and fridge space. And the rest of it is largely stuff that is it's a no-go for me. In my Keto Lessons Learned video on the Transformation series, I talk about how important it is to clear out your pantry and clear out your fridge so there's no temptation. I don't have that luxury. So I am constantly exposed to stuff that's in the pantry, stuff that's on the countertop, from donuts and pastries and cookies, and there are chips and candy and just all of the absolute off-limits keto food that I am exposed to constantly. And that would be tough enough, but also because I've got the wife, I've got my college-age son, my college-age daughter, my college-age quasi-daughter-in-law. There is somebody either eating or making food or talking about food all the time. And since I intermittent fast or do one meal a day, this can be kind of frustrating to me. I feel like the longer you're on keto, the less you feel like a slave of food. I mean, I still love food. I absolutely adore food. I'm a total foodie. But I don't feel compelled to eat constantly. And when I see my family eating constantly, I'm not sure what I would call it. I feel that they are still sort of slaves to food. And I wish that I knew how to break them of that. I wish that I could pull them over to the keto side. It also makes for a challenge when I'm cooking because I need to make the same meal sort of twice. I need to make a keto version and then I make a non-keto version. So if there's rice in the dish, I kind of prep everything except the rice, and then we'll do the rice in the Instapot for the family, and then I'll do riced cauliflower over here. Or if we're doing pizza, I'll make a pizza crust, a traditional Neapolitan sort of pizza crust for them, and then I'll make some variation of fathead or something for me. But it doubles the amount of effort for almost every meal. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start introducing into this channel some more recipes that are conversions from non-keto sources like Food and Wine Magazine or Bon Appetit or Milk Street or America's Test Kitchen, whatever. I feel that the best way that I can kind of ease my family into the keto fold is by creating keto meals that don't seem keto. That's my strategy. If you have a non-keto family member that you're trying to win over and you feel like you're having success with a given strategy, I'd love to hear what it is. Please post it down in the comments. But I would also say to those of you that have a keto buddy, whether that's a spouse, family member, friend, partner, whatever that is, really value that. Use each other for support. Don't underestimate the value of having that sort of support system. So that's kind of it. I thought I might have a more profound way to sort of wrap this episode up, but I don't. Yeah, so kind of going out with a whimper instead of a bang on this episode. But it is what it is. Thanks for watching.